Welcome back to the Truth Over Comfort show. On our last video, we discussed the 1962 Operation Northwest document signed off by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where they discuss justifications and pretext to invade Cuba because they didn't have any real reason to do it. So they come up with staging Cuban terror campaigns in Miami and Florida, maybe even wounding Cubans, sinking a Cuban ship, real or simulated, doing mock funerals, switching out a civilian airliner with a painted to the same CIA drone, which they can blow up and blame on Cuba, all to invade them. And all 11 months after the Bay of Pigs debacle, they don't wait around. And it's really interesting. Check out the document. It's in the show notes of my video, or have a listen to me just reading some of the key sections and seeing how just brazen this is, or was, sorry. Didn't end up happening, obviously. And the guy who got fired went up to head NATO right when Operation Gladio was going on. You can check that out as well. Look it up. Today's video is going to be probably a fairly quick one, and I'm going to be going through different think tanks from UK, US, and one from Australia. The US is pretty much the king of think tanks. They've got an endless amount, and obviously there's some big ones like the Atlantic Council, and that even host, NATO things. They have, influential analyses. They have boards of ex-officials, military, banking, everything. They have the biggest people around, and they put out, policies and analysis of stuff going on, maybe in Russia and Ukraine or China or the Middle East. And they all have this. So I'm not going to go through like a crazy amount, just probably 7 overall. And they all have a common theme of who they're funded by. Not only are they funded by governments and, the Ministry of Defense of governments, or the DoD in America, or different departments of governments, but banking, oil, foundations, every time, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Bill and Melinda Gates, arms corporations, Lockheed Martin, BA Systems, Raytheon, the biggest arms corporation in the world, giving money to these think tanks who, discuss foreign policy. They're mainly foreign policy think tanks. You gotta wonder, So you're the think tank, and you're like, we get funded from Middle Eastern governments, arms corporations, governments, and their military directly as well, separate, to the government stuff as well. Oil companies, all who seem to they benefit when a war kicks off, or they're all pushing, for their policies. And on the boards, obviously, also people who are swimming in that area. And you have to wonder, are you reading it from a neutral perspective? It's like, I think it was an article on The Hill where they're talking about China, I think. And then it says it's sponsored by Lockheed Martin. You're like, who can read that and then see that it's sponsored by the biggest arms corporation in the world and think it's neutral? They just love The Hill. It's like, oh, yeah, all these governments, they just respect the neutrality of the reporting. It's like the UK government giving the BBC money. Like, if the BBC starts becoming too critical of the government, you don't think the government just going to take away that money? Like, why would they pay to be embarrassed? Governments literally squash investigations. COVID-19 investigation, nah. Afghanistan one in the UK, nah. We got the Iraq one when 2016. Oh, good, it happened. Governments don't like investigations. They don't like criticism of them. Arms corporations don't like critical views of what they do or shining a light on their role of lobbying and things like this. So why, a corporation who will literally, fire employees, get the cheapest ones they can. Not all corporations, they're looking to, basically take out humans and, just get AI, the first thing is just like self-checkout, where employees are generally, not as needed, and, the push for digitization, we're willing to sacrifice the people who, they're the consumers meant to be like their biggest worry. Why would they, who literally every year thinking, okay, we made this amount of money, next financial year we need to beat that? Do you think they're going to be wasting money on these think tanks just for fun because they like their reporting? Or are you thinking they give them money because it actually helps their profits in the long term by normalizing the push for whatever it may be? Obviously there's so many different ones funding. They're not just going to rock up like, you have to say this. But I think the think tanks and the people, they're not needing to be persuaded. They are, they're in that policy mindset of pushing for stuff with, Russia, China, or the Middle East, or wherever it may be. It's not, I don't think it's nefarious. It's just self-serving and, bite the hand that feeds you. And they're in agreement. The Atlantic Council always, doing stuff in NATO. They hosted, the Afghan president while before and after. He was on their board before he was the president. They're in agreement with this sort of stuff. Anyway, I've rambled quite a lot. Let's get to some of them. So UK, US, and Australia. But as I said, I'm not going to go through loads and loads. But all their funding is just a common theme, and it's kind of laughable. It's not really pointed out as much. It's the Atlantic Council, which is one of the biggest around. They actually, as I said, have held stuff with NATO, and they are funded by NATO. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to pick out the ones I know. I don't know all of them. You can tell from some of the names, but I'm going to pick out the big ones. So a million plus donations, whether that's a million bang on or 3, who knows? I'm guessing it's below the next one, or they might have to be transparent about that. So the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office gives the Atlantic Council over $1 million. So our taxes, so I've worked, they've taken my taxes out, and people in the British and Foreign Commonwealth say, we really enjoy the Atlantic Council and what they do. Let's give them $1 million. Yeah, I'm sure because people in the Foreign Office Commonwealth specifically care about the Atlantic Council. That makes sense. The Embassy of the UAE, if that doesn't just sum it up. So the UAE, 7 dictatorships in the UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and the other 5, given $1 million here. They don't want favorable look on themselves, not that, they're out of date medieval dictatorships, some of them family dictatorships, lack of human rights, literally the opposite of everything the Western ideals and the Atlantic Council stands for, with the democratic elections and, against authoritarianism like Russia. But then they take money from the UAE, who, probably don't want to get picked on for being that, but don't worry. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, we're all in the club. They like them because they're part of the ally system in the Middle East and that sort of push. And, they let us have bases there. They buy lots of arms corporations. Arms corporations who also fund this. So it's kind of self-serving again. Facebook, Goldman Sachs, the Rockefeller Foundation. Okay, 250,000 to 500,000. Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, another part of the UAE country. Chevron, oil. HSBC, JP Morgan, banking, massive banks who are invested in arms corporations, oil companies, and obviously invest in a lot of stuff, especially JP Morgan. Palantir, Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Raytheon. So top 5 arms corporations in the world. I want to say they're 3rd in the world. United States Department of State, again, a government who just loves war. They don't want to be embarrassed. They kill off dissent. 100,000 to 250. Again, you got to remember they give to more than one think tank. So when it gets lower, it's not, they give to a lot. Blackstone Finance, BP, who got, deals in Iraq and stuff like that. Embassy of Bahrain to the US, Embassy of Japan, Lockheed Martin, biggest arms corporation in the world, the MOD of Finland, the Ministry of National Defense of Lithuania. So again, directly military budgets go into this. NATO Public Diplomacy Division, NATO Stratcom Center for Excellence, Open Society Foundation, George Soros, Rockefellers again, Norwegian MOD, Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Taiwan Economic and Cultural Representative Office, Tails Group, another aerospace, tech, arms corporation, United Technologies Corporation, now Raytheon, United States Department of Energy. And it goes on and on. BlackRock, who invest the top shareholders of all the main arms corporations in America. ExxonMobil, and it goes, on and on and on. Nestle, Northrop Grumman, one of the top arms corporations in the world, top 5 again. I can never remember the order. Lockheed Martin at top. On to the next one. That CSIS, Center for Strategic International Studies. Let's go to their corporate donors because their foundations, Carnegie, Bill and Melinda Gates, Rockefeller, every time, same ones. But that's not really foreign policy sort of stuff, which is interesting that, they fund it. That, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation fund these think tanks who obviously put out stuff that creates war. And when you think old Billy Boy Gates is a bit concerned that it's going to destroy the environment, because which no environmentalist, in the political arena and even on the ground, it seems to probably just goes over the head because it's never discussed. When you drop a massive bomb on land, it probably isn't great for the soil, the air, for people, for plants. But don't worry about that, Bill. Don't worry. I'm sure you just didn't think of it. You didn't think that the US, who, you want to get carbon dioxide down to zero. The US military is one of the biggest polluters. They burn just massive piles of stuff. Don't hear him talking about that on the news. Interesting. 500,000 and above. The Center for Strategic International Studies. Northrop Grumman Corporation, one of the biggest arms corporations. Bank of America, obviously bank. BP again, Chevron again, ExxonMobil, Facebook again, JP Morgan, Lockheed Martin, arms, Saudi Aramco, Saudi Arabia's oil company. Interesting. Boeing, one of the top 5 arms corporations in the world. General Dynamics, one of the biggest too. Johnson & Johnson, Mitsubishi, Microsoft, Raytheon, again, arms, and BHP, one of the biggest. It's an Anglo-Australian company that drills or supports of the infrastructure of getting minerals and resources out of the ground. I think it's the top 5 or 10, all like British and Australian companies. So wonder what they put their money in for. BA Systems, Barclays, just all the same things. Obviously, other corporations. So this is just corporations. What about governments? The US again, Japan again, Taiwan. Is that going to affect their reporting on the China-Taiwan thing? I'm sure China don't fund this. So what do you think? The UAE, Denmark, Norway, Qatar. So it's countries like Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia who are involved in, Syria and Yemen. Is that going to influence what they say? And then also the arms corporations who are involved in the Yemen and that, and who else? The US, the UK. How can they speak on an issue like that when they got not just corporations and governments, oil companies, all from those countries involved? Australia, Canada, Finland, France, Germany, World Bank. Just out of interest, let's have a look at the foundations. Bill and Melinda Gates. Why is he funding it? Carnegie. Can we get the Rockefeller? Rockefeller Brothers, Open Society. Of course they're there. When are they not there? Individual donors. Let's just take a quick look at that. I don't know these. We go to the next one. ASPI. Right, this is an Australian one who you might have recently partnered with Twitter on something, but we'll save that for another video. So look at this. So ASPI's funding. The biggest section is what? Department of Defense from different governments, and then federal governments, overseas government agencies, private sector, etc. So I've got it open. Look at that. A lot of money there. 4 billion? Is that 4 billion? Oh no, that's .00. It's a lot. I always gave it 4 million. 4 million. So the Department of Defense, the DoD, out of its 700 something billion, has rocked up to give them a massive amount of money. That's interesting. They give more than the Australian DoD, which you'll see in a second. So you got loads of like stuff here: defense, Department of Foreign Affairs. So this is all like government stuff. Even China actually gives them some, which is interesting, but not much. Government of Canada, UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Again, obviously, there's not loads of money here. The US Department of State, a lot of money again. US Department of Defense, again. Historic purposes, though. Then we got Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, all these different tech companies. BAE Systems, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, this is Australia. Tails, again. And then that's funny. Yeah, look at that. Think tank funds them to who we just looked at. So again, just the same stuff going up again. Same governments, same arms corporations. You can actually have oil there. So this is a British think tank, ISS. Let's just get what that stands for. Is it going to do this to me? Is it 3 S's? Oh no, IIS. My bad. International Institute for Strategic Studies. Who are they funded by? BAE Systems, Boeing, General Atomics, Aeronautical Systems, BHP again. Oh, sorry, I've been missing that. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce also sells arms. British Army, BP, Chevron, Japan, Ministry of Defense, Singapore, Northrop Grumman, Qatar, Shell, Bahrain, UK again. It's just over and over and over. I've said a lot of them obviously before, so I don't want to, MOD of the UK, MOD of Japan, Spain, Slovenia, sorry, Saudi Arabia. So another British one. Rusi. So the EU. There they are again. The US. They love spending taxpayer money on think tanks. They must have it's interesting they have enough time to read all the different think tanks. Same people funding all the different ones. They must just, how do they even have time for business when they're just reading think tanks they love their analysis of? BAE, British Army. So this is a British think tank. Foreign Commonwealth again. Netherlands Foreign Affairs. Carnegie, Goldman Sachs, Lockheed Martin, Palantir. Again, just same stuff over and over again. So Chatham House, which is the counterpart, not officially, but of the Council on Foreign Relations. They came out of World War One and meetings in there where they wanted closer cooperation between the Anglo-American establishment and Chatham House, which used to be called the Royal Institute of Affairs, comes out of that. So again, we've got our government giving a minute. So that's like pretty much 3 million just from that department of their budget. And governments, they just can't get enough of those taxes. Japan keeps coming up. It's interesting. The US again, Carnegie, Ford, Canada, George Soros, BP, ExxonMobil, Shell, so a lot of oil companies, Chevron, ExxonMobil again, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, British Army, BHP again, NATO, same sort of stuff. And then you got the Rand Corporation, which is officially not part of the government, but it might as well be. And then that's not like a hidden sort of thing. They basically just are like a research arm of the government, but just unofficially. But look at their funding. Office of the US Secretary of Defense and other national security agencies, 67 million. US Army, 39 million. US Air Force, 548 million. Department of Homeland Security, 36. It's just all funded by the US. So let's take a look at their boards. I'm not going to go through all of it again because it is a bit just samey of me just speaking and speaking. So let's go Atlantic Council board. And I was going to pick out a couple figures every time. And it's just government officials, ex-military officials, bankers. So chairman. I probably won't do all of them. Just going to show you a couple examples. Feel free to look yourself. So here we go here. John F.W. Rogers. So he's Goldman Sachs. And what? He used to be an undersecretary to the US Department of State and an assistant secretary to the US Treasury. So banking, ex-government official. So Frederick Kemp, he is just the CEO of the Atlantic Council. So James L. Jones. Just going to do these three. 2. He was Obama's national security advisor in 2009. He used to be in the old Marine Corps, and he was also a commander in that. So it's funded by the military, it's funded by the government, it's got government officials on the board. Wonder what's going on there. Again, I'm not going to do too many. I don't want to go over the top. Video will be done soon, don't worry. So, Sam Newton, ex-senator. Great. John J. Hammer. He was the US Deputy Secretary of Defense. And he used to work as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. So I'm just going to do one more because I don't want to take the sting out of, because I have to kind of slow down. Chatham House board. Before they actually had John Major, previous Prime Minister of the UK, actually heading it up. But now they've got, don't you worry, President Baroness Manningham Buller LG. Could you ever get further from the working class? Ex Director General of MI5. Fantastic. Ex member of Parliament and Secretary of State, all these different things. And let's just do one more. He was ambassador to the US, foreign policy and defense advisor to who? Tony Blair during what? The Iraq War. That's great. Ambassador to the EU, special envoy for international data sharing, whatever that means. So just again, I'm going to leave it there. Everything going to go in the show notes. You can check out their boards. It's probably more of a thing you want to maybe read in an article, but you can see it visually. Just the same people: arms corporations, the military, the government, foundations, oil, and banking, all funding these people with people on the boards who were from banking, government, Ministry of Defense, and stuff like that. If you go through other ones, and it's just a cycle and a circle of just the same characters and the same reasons they might fund for foreign adventures, foreign policy, who benefit: oil, banking, investment firms who invested in the arms corporations, and they all give to this think tank, and they feel the think tank. You're thinking, I've got Middle Eastern governments at the time, they're pushing for the Syria war, and arms corporations, all these people pushing for it, all funding us. How are you going to write something critical? And like stuff like NATO. Imagine the Atlantic Council is funded by NATO, and then they start saying, we're against NATO expansion, and we agree with why Russia invaded Ukraine. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's fairyland. There's multiple governments. It's not just the UK and the US. It's Japan, the Netherlands. It's crazy. But thanks for tuning into the Truth Over Comfort show, and I'll leave it there.